Hello and welcome to Zekism's thoughts, reviews, takes on Daredevil Born Again Season 2, Episodes 2 and 3. We had 2 this week, which is great. It's always good to have more Daredevil than not. I can see why they released these 2 in batch, because I preferred 3 to 2, if I'm totally honest, but 2, it didn't have a lot of, dare I say, action in it or sort of key moments, so I can see they sort of think 2's going to go down really badly post launch. We really don't want to sort of dampen the momentum that we gained from the restart or the release of season 2, so I can see why they batched these 2 together. And 3 ends on a bit of an explosive sort of, not cliffhanger as such, but sort of end point, and so it made sense. I think it makes sense to release these 2, but yeah, a couple of really good episodes. Like I said, I preferred 3, but we'll get into, I guess, what happened, my thoughts. I'm trying not to spoil, but I'm finding it a bit more difficult than not, so we'll go through key story beats in them first, and then sort of, I'll give my overall takes at the end. So we'll start with episode 2. Essentially, we're open with Wilson Fisk in his mayoral office, which is looking more and more sort of Oval Office-y, but we'll gloss over that. So we start with a Buck essentially talking to Wilson, and saying, well, maybe you should reveal the fact that Matt Murdock is Daredevil to the public, and turn favor on your side. And actually, Fisk says, well, actually, this is the man who saved my life, so let's use that essentially and say, look, sympathetically, the attack on Matt's apartment from the end of season 1, we still haven't found him. Please, and if anyone knows anything, basically get in touch, and we'll hopefully save this man who saved me. Which is essentially trying to have the public search for not just Daredevil but Matt Murdock as well, so everyone's a lookout basically. So the wanted personnel of Karen and Matt are even more wanted now, so it's a clever plan from Fisk. We have a really funny moment where he's training for his boxing match, which is an ongoing thing, which we've seen in the trailer. He does have a boxing match. The mayor is going to get into the ring as a show of strength, I imagine, and we see him training with his trainer, who's sort of hounding him, going, come on, get up, stop being so weak and stuff. And so he essentially just levels him against the glass wall for interrupting him when he's talking to Buck. We see more anti-vigilante task force roughing up people, heavy-handed, not just to police colleagues of Cherry, who features at the end. At the beginning of the episode, because at the end of the last one, he was suffering a heart attack, and Bullseye essentially saved the day. We'll get to him in a second. The anti-vigilante task force also clashed with a bodega owner and Angela, the niece of White Tiger from season 1, and her auntie get involved, trying to sort of dispel the commotion, and she puts her hands on a task force officer, who then proceeds to arrest her and throw her in the cages. And so Angela sort of retreats to Kristen in the law offices for support. And we also see Angela obtain the bracelet of the White Tiger, so we'll see that enveloping. Again, I'll give my thoughts on that in the future. And we also see more of not just Bullseye. Bullseye does a couple of good things. One, he takes out anti-vigilante task force members, so I think we've got Bullseye basically as an agent of chaos, working both sides, not just the good in terms of the Daredevil and Karen Page, who aren't sure what to make of him, and also we've got him working against Fisk and task force members. So he's just, as he is in the comics, an agent of chaos, which is brilliant. I love this character. He also goes to the church, interestingly, at the beginning of the episode, and I wish they'd focused more on this, and asked for Sister Maggie. Obviously, we know that is Matt Murdock's real mum. I don't think he knows this. Just goes to the church, says he wants to talk to someone, give confession. Where is Sister Maggie? And the priest who's working there, who seems to be a junior priest, says she's in the Vatican for a year, I don't know what you call it, a sabbatical, not sabbatical as such, but like a reconnection with God. So that has answered a big question that I had from season 1, which is where she is. Now we know she's in Italy, at Vatican City. So there you go. Well, that has answered my question for that. Although I do want to see her back in the show. Next we've got, I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah, Buck. Buck is so creepy. He is so creepy. Does anyone else find him creepy? And we've also got more Daniel. Daniel is tasked as head of communications, or deputy mayor in charge of communications, to find out who's doing these viral videos of Fisk with his, his mask. He's sort of what's the big head guy from the 80s? I can't remember his name. But yeah, the viral videos of, and we essentially find out it's BB, and he sort of knows it's BB but won't say it. He's saying, look, if you're doing this, please stop, and he finds out basically that his laptop was hacked, or they've got obtained footage of Daredevil tanking Northern Star at the beginning of episode 1. They got it from his laptop, so he sort of suspects it's BB but won't say it. But the video's on go. We know it's BB because we find out at the end of the episode. Spoiler. Yeah, and that's pretty much episode 1. We have more of Heather's descent into some sort of madness, which again we'll get to as well. So we'll just skip to episode 3 now. Episode 3 basically is the trial of Swordsman, Jack DeCane. We've got him being interviewed by Kristen. Kristen goes into Red Hook, which is essentially a prison at this point, as well as a port. It's a private land owned by the Fisks, or run by the Fisks, one or the other. And she goes there basically as his legal representative, but again, the trial's the next day or the day before, the day after, so she's had no time to prepare an actual case, which is predictable. And we essentially see the trial of Swordsman, which goes the way you'd expect, and he is found guilty. We then have the Daredevil, Matt Murdock, and Karen trying to find a way into Red Hook, in order to find out not just what's going on in there, but also to rescue Swordsman and also anyone else stashed in there, as well as find out what Fisk is hauling, or is being hauled through Red Hook. And at the end of episode 2, we had the task force approaching Josie's bar. Daredevil foils them, but also Karen intercepts one of the task force agents who isn't particularly on board with what they're doing, so gives the key card for the entry to Red Hook. And through Kristen, and Daredevil approaches her through the offices, obtains some means of understanding what the Red Hook systems are all about, because she was blindfolded when she was in there, but obviously him being blind can anticipate the hearing that or the account that she gives in order to better understand how to get in there, or sort of weak points. So yeah, he breaks in there. He breaks out Swordsman and all the other hostages that are there, or prisoners that are there at Red Hook, and there is a breakout scene which is very explosive, very action-packed. The task force firing at the escaped prisoners, and yeah, that essentially is the episode in a nutshell. We've got as well as the governor of New York pressing Fisk because he doesn't want any jurisdiction or oversight. The CIA, she's aware that the CIA agent Mr. Charles has sort of nipped some of that jurisdiction in the bud through Valentina, but she's still pressing him. She's trying to push his buttons, and it's working to a certain extent. And Vanessa's trying to calm him down, saying, "Look, she's just scared of you. Just try and relax." And yeah, I think and the episode ends with a big explosion. It was predicted in season 1, episode 1, by Mr. Charles, who said, the workers, we can dispense with the workers after they've unloaded the shipment of weapons. That happens at the end. Daredevil and Karen Page, as they're escaping the breakout, they see basically Fisk commands the task force to blow the Northern Star, which sinks it. All the workers on board that have unloaded all the weapons, or done their job essentially with regards to the weapons, are killed in the sinking of Northern Star and the resulting explosion. And so that's how we end the episode. Big explosive sort of visual, and obviously the reprehensible actions of the task force on display as a result of Fisk's commands. Where are we going with episode 4? So yeah, we saw Angela become, to a certain extent, the White Tiger. She wore the amulet. She was involved in the breakout because she was able to intercept some of the comms and some of the badges. She is going to become White Tiger, essentially, is what the show's telling us. I have mixed thoughts on this because I don't hate the character. I don't hate the actress is pretty good, actually, to be fair to her. So I don't want to criticize too much. It's just an element of, when you're a slightly older guy, which I am, and kids get involved with grown-ups, there's an element of annoyance there. You just go, you're a little irritating, you're a little in the way. And so there was a little bit of that when I see her sort of getting involved with the breakout, and I think, you don't really need you there, to be honest. I'd rather you, which I'm sure this is in the plans anyway with regards to Marvel, which is to get her involved in Young Avengers. At the moment, I'm not really interested in seeing her in the show, but I understand she's, angry, and I think that the show is telling a story about anger to a certain extent with regards to sort of, politics, as much as it is involved in getting involved with anger when it comes to sort of being oppressed, being pinned down by the man or by the authorities and all this sort of stuff, and sort of rebelling against the system, which she's got cause to do because her uncle was killed essentially by the task force. So she's very cross, very angry, and it's become the White Tiger, which is essentially what's going to happen as the season goes on. I'm sure with little combat experience, she will become a kick-ass fighter by the end of it, or maybe, the new improved Karen Page, who now apparently knows fighting and martial arts, will be able to train her, or some degree of truth. The truth is probably in the middle of that. One other note, Charlie Cox is really massive. I mean, genuinely, he's always been in good shape, but he looks visibly bigger in this show, and you see him with the shirt off later and you go, wow, he's pretty swole. So credit to Charlie Cox, and obviously he's been working out with that trainer that revealed he was going to be in Doomsday, which may or may not be true. I'm pretty sure it's probably Brand New Day he's probably in, more so than Doomsday, but yeah, so he's been working out quite a bit. I'm really glad they mentioned Sister Maggie, because that was a real bugbear of me from season 1. I was like, that's a really key, important character in Matt's life. Where is she? And why doesn't he know? Or maybe he does know, but they haven't revealed it. But anyway, Bullseye was the one to tell us, the audience, weirdly. But at least I know where she is in the world, so I'm glad. It's funny, the Punisher explanation that Karen and Matt talk about when they're in his hideout, which is like, oh, he's just around. He's just doing Punisher things around. He's just off screen, doing stuff in New York, which we've seen in the trailer for Brand New Day. He's just around doing Punisher things. And so Matt sort of balks at the idea that he gets involved with what they're doing, because he goes, oh, we don't want to murder anyone. So instead, Punisher's going to be in a Spider-Man film, weirdly. You can't help but mention or reference the modern day political climate. It's all over the show. As much as I don't want it there, because I just want my entertainment to be entertainment, you cannot help but see the parallels or the references to the modern day America, I guess. And I don't live in America, you can probably tell by my accent, but from everything you read on the news, you see in media, there's a lot of anger and hostility towards law enforcement in America, perceived, sort of in line with the anti-vigilante task force, the parallels in terms of being heavy-handed and being overly forceful. And I'm not going to get into any of those issues because I don't know for a start, so I'm not going to speak experience on things I don't know about, but also I sort of don't want to mention it because it should be purely from entertainment purposes, but you can't help but look at it and go, oh, I know what they're referencing here. As much as Dario Scardapenni doesn't want to mention it in press releases and promoting the show, which I think is probably a good idea, because you don't sort of want to off the bat alienate one side of the aisle or a potential audience. But at the same time, I mean, anyone who watches the show, it's really hard to divorce yourself from that perception just from watching the show. I know it's based on comic book literacy, but you cannot help but think, okay, they're referencing what the perception is of real day. Anyway, regardless, good or for better, it is what it is. I mentioned again, Buck is so creepy. Buck is really creepy as a character. And this is me pivoting from what I was speaking about before. I mentioned Angela as White Tiger. I'm not a massive fan, but I understand her role in the show. Heather's descent into madness to a certain extent, or her being overly traumatized from the PTSD of Muse and the attack from Muse in season 1, spearheading her actions, which, you know, she's very fervent on what she believes in, but I think even she's starting to question her humanity to a certain extent from selling out essentially to Fisk, you know, helping get Swordsman sent down with her psychological profiles, and the traumas dictating what she's doing. So yeah, and full spoiler or prediction, I don't think it's going to end well for Heather this season. That's just my prediction. But it's interesting to see her paired up with Buck, which does happen in episode 3. Vanessa sort of pairs them together on the table deliberately because she thinks there might be a spark, and seemingly there might be some romance with Heather and Buck. It'll be interesting to see Buck's relationship with Vanessa, though, because Vanessa, I don't know if there was a moment in episode 2 where they were sort of trying guns and there was some sort of spark there. I wonder what that's about. But also, I think she's scared of Bullseye, or scared that Bullseye's coming for her, which she might have some validation about. And what happens between her and Bullseye may involve Buck going forward as well. Buck versus Bullseye, I can see happening at some point during the season. And one other detail, which was the watch that Daredevil put into one of the boxes of weapons in episode 1, and I was sort of, at the time I thought, oh, that's weird. Now I see they're referencing episode 3 because he was able to listen for that watch ticking in one of the boxes to know where the crates of weapons or the cargo was stored. I love that detail. I didn't realise it at the time while I was watching episode 1 what he was doing. And sort of glossed over it and even forgot about it to a certain extent. So I was glad that they brought that back. And I thought, oh, that's a really clever detail. So yeah, I'll shout out that. Other than that, yeah, I'm really enjoying the season. Regardless of my beliefs on the political aspects, I think it's a really entertaining season. I like the character development. I don't agree with some of the online criticism towards the show, which is like it's a show not focused on Daredevil enough or Matt Murdock. I think because they're underground, because they're in hiding, and you have support characters in order to prop up the show with B stories, that's what's going on. It all feeds into one narrative, which is Fisk versus Daredevil, though. So I disagree with that criticism that the show's getting at the moment from some certain online communities. And so yeah, for me, I'm really loving the show, as you probably would expect because I'm a massive shill. But yeah, I'm really loving the show. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please leave a like or subscribe on the channel as well. And I'll speak to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.